I have created a space and coaching experience for men to be with other men in their wrestle towards wholeness. Our goal isn't perfection, our goal is wholeness. And men need other men to come alongside one another, sit with their struggle, witness their worth, and mirror a healthy masculinity in practice and skill development towards maturity and integration. Just today in Man Cave, we attuned with the places in our hearts and stories that embraced our deepest flaws and imperfections. And together we entered into an embodied perspective of what it looks like to not let shame or fear control the steering wheel of our lives anymore. Facing the darker and more dense parts of our stories enables us to let go of the beliefs, the narratives, and the mental constructs that may have once served us, but do not serve us anymore. It's real important work, and it's work worth doing, but often too hard to do alone. And so we coach in groups and then alternate with one-on-one sessions. This episode is aimed at men and is an invitation to explore this inner heart work. In Darkness 101, we will revisit one of the most misunderstood teachers of our time. Without being acquainted with her, we are most likely going to repeat the class more than once. And what if the very lessons we've been avoiding can actually become the source of our grandest wisdom? Unless men are shown how to move through their darkness, then their darkness will move through them. One of my greatest teachers has been darkness, yielding the richest of treasures. Yet she's often misunderstood, maligned, and even marginalized. What has darkness taught you? Unless men are shown how to move through their darkness, then their darkness will move through them. And one of my greatest teachers of all time has been darkness yielding the richest of treasures. She's often misunderstood, maligned, or marginalized. I once had a teacher in middle school for earth science, Mrs. Gutmanstein. Who has been the worst teacher that you've ever had? Well, she wasn't a bad teacher. She just drove me crazy. Granted, I was a punk that year and I gave her a really hard time. The thing was, I really hated her. And it may sound mild, but it was intense and all consuming. And it was some of my inner darkness coming out of me during a few difficult years during my teens. Well, years later, while overseas, God had me revisit that darkness of how I treated this poor woman. And I remember writing her a letter of deep apology and regret for my attitude. And this was more than just a mere attitude. I was one of those kids who hated compulsory education and wanted to end it. I'll just say that. And so wrote her this letter, and she was so moved by that gesture and pursuant visit to the school that I was able to hug a woman that I hated. Simple story with lots more details. Yet we often miss the lesson that darkness brings to us as a teacher of the soul. And if we don't learn the lesson and treat darkness like Mrs. Gutmanstein, God doesn't necessarily flunk us. He just simply allows us to take the class over and over and over again. I spend my time coaching men how to move through their darkness so it doesn't smother those closest to them. Often it takes the light of the second half of life, not biologically. It often takes the light of the second half of life, psychologically or spiritually, to illuminate a new perspective that you didn't see in the first half of life. What have you learned from darkness, my old friend? The big picture is that historically, in masculine culture, the threshold of boyhood into manhood would have rituals of initiation to equip them for that pivotal transition. Facing darkness was part of that maturation process. If we haven't had something like that for ourselves, life will send us opportunity after opportunity to face some stark truth about us that often reveals our blind spots. This is what is called shadow work. What are those places or parts of us that we don't want anyone ever to see? What are those places or parts of us that even we ourselves don't ever want to see? Honesty is required. When we don't do this inner heart work of becoming aware of the truest motives within us, usually subconsciously, we will continue to project those unacceptable places within us and mirror them onto others. When we're harsh toward our own flaws and failures, we shove them into the shadows for no one to see. Have you had drama in your relationships? Are you defensive? Do you stonewall? Do you attack? Do you struggle with jealousy or judgments? Does your mind replay the loop of the faults of yourself or others over and over in the reel of resentment? Perhaps you've numbed yourself relationally to avoid attaching vulnerably to anyone. And you often hear about your emotional unavailability from those that you love over and over again. But you don't know what to do about it. Whether you want to avoid areas in relationships or they plain old make you anxious, these all stem from your shadow. Without bringing the light of truth to these raw and vulnerable places, men's sense of self leadership is sabotaged by the shadow. Men need to be shown how to be men. I've needed this in my life. Men need other examples of what it looks like to be an honest man. Not perfect, but on an honest path towards wholeness. Not rigid or chaotic, but an integrated man. A grown up man, not a man child like the statistical majority we see in our world today. A man who has surrendered his avoidance to deconstruct those habits and narratives that haven't served him. Just let him go. A man who can exchange resistance for acceptance in his shadow work. A man who could admit, like Brennan Manning puts it, to live by grace means to acknowledge my whole life story, all of it, the light side and the dark. In admitting my shadow side, I learn who I am and what God's grace means. And we do this by undoing and unbecoming and letting go of the inauthentic places inside of us to allow the real essence of us to emerge and awaken. Men need to see other men without their masks on. Men need to see other men lament and laugh, fail, and get up again. Joseph Campbell, the mythic poet, think hero's journey language here, is attributed to have said, "The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek." I would almost tweak that a bit and say, the chest that you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. The chest you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. Man, you need a guide, a coach, a friend who can walk with you through your shadow so that the darkness you're avoiding stops moving through you. What would it look like to return to your heart? Love and accept the less desirable parts of you and emerge from that inner work with more tenderness, compassion, confidence, and wisdom so you can experience less chaos and disorder and more fulfilling relationships. What would that wholeness look like for you? How would it impact your life on a day-to-day basis? What if you could step into the freedom you've always wanted? What would it feel like to let go of the person you've been trying so hard to pretend to be? What would it feel like to not hide from others in relationships? What if you could find the fullness and the richness of life by meeting yourself with a tender transparency about the truth of who you've been and who you've always longed to become? How would it make you feel to live from a calm mind and wild heart? If you desire this, keep tracking with me here. Some of us have received the knowledge and the skill set of building, finances, fixing, how to fight. But how many of us guys have been shown how to listen deeply, attune with the person in front of us, how to be present, how to connect, how to repair a rupture in a relationship? Sure, it's easy for some guys to identify a hammer from a screwdriver from a saw, but what if there's another kind of toolbox in the inner life? Because there can often be a lack of understanding what tools we need when facing uncomfortable and difficult emotions. It makes sense that men are professionals at pain avoidance. But what if pain in us or in others wasn't a scary wilderness with wolves to avoid, but pain could actually be a portal towards peace and power? What if conflict really could foster and cultivate a more intimate connection? What if this ever important task of masculine development catalyzed your untapped potential? Why does all of this matter? Well, some of the things I've noticed while coaching men and doing my own inner work, some of the reasons why men don't do their inner work are these. One of the great tragedies of life is being great or paying attention to things that really won't matter in the end and neglecting what really matters. And what really matters are the people in your life, relationships. But if you haven't learned how to relate well with yourself, you won't be able to sustain a healthy connection with others. The good book in Proverbs tells us to guard our heart, for out of it flow all of the issues of life. A lot of men I work with in the beginning don't even know how to access their hearts. No shame, no blame, no judgment. They just simply have not been shown how. It takes intention to be a man of the heart. The poet Yeats, he says that man needs reckless courage to descend into the abyss of himself. I have found that men who aren't shown how to do this inner heart work, they don't do it because of fear and shame. Fear because it's scary down there in that unknown forest, and the wolves and the wolverines of my unknown emotions might eat me alive. What if I get stuck out there or in a painful experience? And shame. What have I done in my life? Who have I hurt? And who has hurt me? Who in the world would anyone want to face any of that? I get it. Well, the thing is that we don't have the courage to enter into the wilderness of our heart. If we don't enter in for this heart work, we'll end up suppressing, avoiding, or denying our emotions. And there are parts of us that are stuck in that emotional experience that will show up in the present moment when we get triggered. The truth of the matter is, those unprocessed experiences of life and those emotions attached to them, they don't go away. Your secrets will make you sick. They become buried in your mind, in your memories, and your body. It's been said in the book, The Body Keeps the Score, that the body keeps the score. And it's only a matter of time before the beach ball that you've tried to keep under the water will zip up and hit you in the face at the least opportune time, I'm sure. Whatever you bury rules you. Whatever you bury rules you. And these unhealed emotions will find expression some other way. Men who are not shown how to manage their feelings will, in fact, be managed by them. Men who are made sick by unprocessed feelings will make those around them also feel sick, even unconsciously. Men need a safe container to fall apart and be put back together with a healthier emotional infrastructure. And we need men with other men to learn how to do this. Community is so important, especially when we're facing confusion around this process of deconstruction and decomposition of all that we've known in the past. When the old scripts of shame are louder than the voice of truth within you, that's when community can remind you who you truly are. The landscape of the heart is the landscape of emotion. Learning to dial into the voice of your heart is tuning into the place where God dwells. And the voice that you listen to most is the voice that will define you. Letting go of our perspective for His, it begins the process of washing the layers and layers off the diamond of our souls. How many people have we allowed to tell us who we should be? It takes years to clean the should from off of our hearts, from all of the lies and the labels we've believed. Learning to live a heart-minded life means obtaining more of an emotional, intelligent vocabulary, along with the emotional skills of regulation. Without these skills and practices, men will remain in floaties in the pool of maturity. And guys, flexing with floaties on is not sexy. Where do man children try to convince you that they're all grown up? By just trying to impress everybody. Well, overcompensating with providing, for example, as good as provision is and necessary, even that can often be an escape from the maturity required for heart to heart connection. Some men will even burn out with the badge of busyness attached to their chest, trying to earn seven figures before they'd even consider vulnerability. Still others who maybe aren't quite as shut down to their feelings or more like addicts given to impulse, and the chaotic churn of their emotions continue to rule them. Either way, honest heart work is so important for meaningful relationships. Bravery, true bravery, begins with the willingness to be seen and known. Men don't do their inner work because they would rather tolerate their familiar pain than confront unfamiliar pain, like scaling a mountain or excavating the layers of crust on the heart. This is the classical journey of the hero. But not all have the tools for the adventure. Men need other men to talk about their shadow, to help them face their darkness, to be free from their self sabotage, and to develop sustainable self leadership. To receive these tools, you'll have to lay aside your fear and say yes to do this inner work. Unless you come out of the shadows of distorted perceptions of yourself and those around you, you'll continue to live from a petrified heart. And until you learn how to transform your pain into power, you'll transmit it to those closest to you. Men, there is a light within you that is brighter and more brilliant than you can imagine. And to get to the essence of who you truly are, underneath all of those layers, you need to be shown the deeper truth of your identity. When the old scripts of shame and fear are louder than the voice of truth within you, that's when community can remind you of who you truly are. When you're shown how to replace fear as your leader, the demons of darkness will no longer haunt you. The bottom line is this: there are so many falls within Christianity on a macro level, and ruptures in relationships on a micro level. There's never been a better time for this kind of deep work for a relational revolution. And these moments and seasons are raising hurts and questions that are illuminating the cracks in the foundation of Christian culture and in many hearts and in many homes. I'm riveted with training men how to find the pain pathway through it all to peace and power. No matter the degree, the position, gifting, or ability of the men that are before me, men are professionals at pain avoidance, emotional unavailability, and abdicating self leadership. And unless men are given the tools to transform their pain into power and purpose, they will transmit that pain onto those closest to them. Unless men are shown how to find the treasure within their darkness, they will be unable to esteem the treasure in the darkness of others. Until men face the darkness within them, they will continue to build their man caves of retreat outside of them to avoid what is inwardly haunting them. Are you still tracking with me? If you've listened this far, that means there's an invitation for you to pay attention to. And why is this important for Christian men in particular? I'm glad you asked. It's because so much of our Western culture misses the gifts that darkness brings. When we live from the neck up to the neglect of the heart and body, obsessed with the latest bright and shiny toy or teaching revelation, it's so tempting to stay there and jump onto the next toy, teacher, conference, ecstatic escape without being a grounded human. Christians can easily stay in the clouds, in the element of air, often very untethered from humanity. How do I know? That's why I've created the program. I'm also a client. Yet when we have a guide to bring us into the clay being of our hearts, the earth element roots us into the reality of what it means to be human. Listen, to be intentional is to be incarnational. Many of the men I work with are running from their lives, running from their thoughts, running from their habits, running from their feelings, and running from their pain. To be a man, we look at the incarnation. The incarnation of Christ is the key to transformation. I believe it takes God to become a man, and the incarnation of Jesus is what it looks like for a man to incarnate, literally meaning how to live in these bodies of ours amidst all of the beauty and the brokenness of life. Jesus, like no other, gives us the ballast of learning how to be tough and how to be tender. One of the ways we dig into intention is to pay attention to those places where we are in tension. We've been accustomed to not doing this in our heart work. We avoid, we escape, or we deny these places as men, or even worse, we spiritually bypass them altogether. In order to become a man after God's own heart, great intention is required. Paying attention to Christ will empower us to be more intentional than reactional. To be intentional is to be incarnational. What would it look like to live like Jesus, who only did what the Father showed him to do? I'm so very proud of the men I work with because they're the bravest men I know, facing their darkness and allowing spirit to illuminate from the inside out. Here's the invitation. Men, there is a pathway through your pain. And unless you're shown how to move through your darkness, then your darkness will continue to move through you. Without an awareness of how to face your darkness, befriend it. Turn the lights on from the inside. You'll likely continue repressing, rebuking, or raging at it. Men, Jesus is not afraid of our darkness. He stood steadfast and immovable in the midst of all the brokenness of this world, yet unafraid and unintimidated by it. He's not afraid or intimidated by you at all. He's underneath all of the rubble in our inner man caves, and he even knows the secrets we've kept that have made us sick. It's time to let them go. He's waiting to bring his healing light and turn it on gently from the inside out. The greatest healing team of all time lives within you. Again, the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. The chest you fear to enter holds the medicine, healing, meaning, and treasure you've always sought. William Paul Young, writer of The Shack, he describes it this way: all of us come with a house on the inside that people helped us build. Some of us, we bring a shack. And then we can't help but involve other people in our losses. And it seems safer to fake our way and keep trying. But at some point, we don't go back in the shack and dare let somebody in there. We're just trying to keep going, but we keep puking our poison on everyone around us, especially on the people that we love the most. He writes, God's intent to heal us, even though it is as through fire. We need the activity of fire to expose our hearts, to heal us. Fire is restorative. Fire purifies. God is a consuming fire. If God can befriend you, even in your worst condition, do you think you could befriend you? Not just the bright and shiny parts of you, but all of you. If God can befriend even the darkest places within you, could you even begin to accept those parts of you? Listen, if there isn't a safe space for you to talk about shame, you won't learn how to metabolize your pain. You don't have to avoid your shack and hide it in the dark. From inside our inner man cave, Father, Son, and Spirit emerge from our darkest places. It's always grace first. Grace is a great gal because she brings the wise, healing comfort that you need. Grace accepts you as you are and will kindle the torch of light to renovate your inner man cave into an inner mansion. That's the work we do. And so I extend this invitation for you to consider training with me and my group of men who do this inner work together. As I close, may one of our many meditations be a prayer for you. Open my heart to release imperfection. Widen my eyes to see my reflection. Illuminate my darkness with new sight. Kindle in me your torch of light. Take care of your heart. It's the only one you have. May your heart be loved. The dark, the light, and all the shadows in between. May the light of the world eclipse the dark night of your soul. For truly, truly, the light wins. We really appreciate you listening to this episode of the Take Heart podcast. Are you longing for deep and meaningful spiritual community? Do you desire heart-to-heart connection with God and others? How can we take heart again so that we can give heart to others? We'd like to invite you into a community of practice, a people of belonging and bliss. More than mere talk, we practice. Why does practice matter? Well, practice matters because maturity matters. If you can't lead yourself well, how can you lead others? Consider joining us for an intro call at luke10.com, lk10.com, to explore what a safe and secure experience looks like to build, develop, and implement skills of relational connection and emotional intelligence so that we can become vibrant and joy-fueled families of Jesus. Jesus, Master of Hearts, said, I have said these things to you, that in me you may have peace. In the world you will have tribulation, but take heart, I have overcome the world. May you continue to take heart, one podcast at a time.